Hey guys, it's Mary from Moon Goddess Diaries. I hope you're all feeling your best. Today I'd like to invite you to come explore a little bit of ancient Egypt with me. We'll talk about a little Egyptian art, a little bit about history and a little bit about the myths and its influence on the Western world in modern art and jewellery and architecture. It inspired a whole Egyptian revival in the 1920s and 1930s. Relax back with a coffee or beverage and snack of your choice and join me for a chat about ancient Egypt. I was very fortunate to go to the Pharaoh Exhibition at the National Art Gallery in Melbourne this past week. It was an amazing collection of artifacts, so inspiring and displayed with music to just set the mood beautifully. It was perfect. I'd love to share this with you, some of the highlights of the exhibition and how inspiring I found the artifacts to be. Anybody local here in Australia, I totally encourage you to go. It was an amazing experience, truly. A once-off, glimpse for anyone like me who loves these things but will never actually get the chance to go to Egypt. The exhibition was called Pharaohs. They were the royal family of ancient Egypt, as you know, that ruled around 3,000 years ago. There were many dynasties, maybe similar to ancient China. The royal family were connected to the Egyptian gods and goddesses in those days. Two major deities included in this exhibition were the god Seth and the goddess Sekhmet. We'll talk more about them later on in the video. I'll show you more about especially Sekhmet, her beautiful, stunning display. It would just be amazing to go to Egypt and to see all these awesome sights. Have any of you been to Egypt and seen the pyramids or the Sphinx? Please let me know in the comments below. In Egypt society, religion was a central part of everyday life. Pharaohs were the go-between the deities and the people. They were in charge of the cosmic balance, enacting laws for structure and safety of the people, etc. They were in charge of the temples, the rituals and festivals, and all the celebrations to celebrate the deity. One of the most famous pharaohs being Tutankhamun, King Tut. He ruled Egypt from 1332 to 1323 BC. He became king as a child. He was only 8 or 9. He died young too at 18 or 19. Historians are unsure how, but he has a bone fragment inside his skull, leading some to say he was murdered. His tomb was discovered in 1922 by a British archaeologist. In the tomb were 3 other shrines, golden coffins, and the mummy of Tutankhamun. He's famous because his tomb was found intact, giving archaeologists a great insight into learning about ancient Egypt. The contents of his tomb are by far the most valuable and complete example of a royal set of burial goods in the Valley of the Kings. There was about 5,000 objects in his tomb. The ancient Egyptians believed that by burying the person whole, mummifying the body, and preserving organs in herbs and wine, they will return into the afterlife with all their worldly possessions too. Tutankhamun's excavation and discovery of his tomb and the artifacts that were found there started an Egyptian revival period. Egyptian artifacts were very collectible all through the 18th, 19th and especially the 20th century in the Western world. This magnificent statue is of Ramses II, commonly known as Ramses the Great. He was the 3rd ruler in the 18th dynasty. He is regarded as one of the most powerful pharaohs in the most powerful period of ancient Egypt. He built a lot of the cities, temples and monuments in Egypt. He established the city, the Nile Delta. Upon his death, he was buried in the Valley of the Kings. His tomb was discovered in 1881. And his mummy is on display at the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization in Cairo. Two great deities displayed at the NGV were Seth and Sekhmet. They were awe-inspiring. There was a beautiful large statue of Seth, this is it, and a temple-like display of Sekhmet I'll show you in a moment. They were both warrior deities. Seth was a trickster. He was a sky god, lord of the desert and master of storms and war. He was the brother of Osiris, you tell me if I've pronounced that correctly, whom he kills out of jealousy. Typical. How many kings had duels with their brothers? And he didn't get on with Horus either. Horus was the son of Isis. Seth was feared by man and gods. He was one of the earlier gods. He's referred to in many temples and tombs in Egypt. Seth served as protector of soldiers, hunters, and merchants. According to the myth, he inherited the deserts from the god Jeb, the god of earth. I love reading myths and legends from around the world. It's so interesting, and standing in front of this statue, it was an amazing experience. It was really awesome. This is Sekhmet. Sekhmet was a solar deity. She's often associated with Hathor and Bastet. They have the feline head of the lion or the cat. If I'm pronouncing her wrong, please let me know. The NGV did a wonderful job of displaying her statues. They set it up as very similar to walking into an ancient Egyptian site. Oh, it was awesome. The music was playing. It was an amazing experience, causing goosebumps. She was the daughter of Ra and is a very important goddess in the Egyptian pantheon. She's one of the most represented goddesses in many collections all over the world. There are many amulets and statues depicting her in Egyptian art. She again has two sides. She's the goddess of war and of healing and protection. They say her Greek equivalent was Athena, the goddess of war. The pantheons of Egypt and Rome and Greece have various similarities, the gods and the goddesses, I believe. If you have some myths and legends about Egypt gods and goddesses, or your favourite pantheon of gods and goddesses, please tell me about them in the comments. Yeah, all the pantheon myths and legends, they're so fascinating. To see these statues up close, she was absolutely awesome. These carvings and ones like it were found around Karnak on the East Bank River at Thebes. She was often portrayed with a papyrus scepter and the ankh sign in her hands, reflecting life and fertility in times of the Nile floods. It's just so amazing to see. These artifacts are thousands of years old. Awesome experience. This lioness statue, just perfect examples of Egyptian art. 3,000 years ago. How did they do it? How did they build the pyramids? Yeah, questions like this, I don't think anybody's been able to really answer, even in modern times. As I mentioned earlier, the Egyptian artifacts were very collectible all through the 18th, 19th, and especially the 20th century in the Western world, and they really influenced Western art and architecture and jewellery too. Egyptian jewellery was trending in the 1920s and 30s. Every fashionable woman had a scarab brooch at the time. Queen Elizabeth is seen very often with a red ruby scarab brooch she received from Prince Philip in the 60s. It was very special to her, and you'll see it in many photos. Egyptian art was often painted on papyrus. The papyrus plant is from the Delta Nile and is a symbol of green and luscious harvest. It represented growth, vigour, and all things fresh, new and growing. You will often see tourist papyrus prints for sale at all the markets. Very famous, but the paintings are absolutely gorgeous. These are original examples displayed at the NGV, and the colours are just amazing. 3,000 years old, beautifully done. This is a statue of the royal family, King Ramses and his wife. Amazing statues in this exhibition. They just blew your mind, really, they did. It was just so awesome, I can't tell you. The Egyptian writing, known as hieroglyphics today, was very beautiful script. You'd all know that. It's been around for a long time. A combination of pictures and symbols. And that's a Greek word for sacred words, and they've been around for about 4,000 years, the use of hieroglyphics. I think the script is beautiful, and it was found on many of the tombs and temples. It was used to decorate the walls, but also importantly to tell the stories of the various kings and pharaohs in history. The papyrus revolutionized the literary world by producing a smooth surface to write on that accepted ink without blurring or smudging. And then in later years, of course, I suppose paper came about from the tree bark. I think it originated in China from the mulberry trees. Correct me again if I'm wrong. I'm not an expert on any of these subjects. Egyptian artifacts and hieroglyphics influence Western art and architecture a lot. In jewellery design, as seen in this beautiful Urta pendant, the scarab brooches, as discussed earlier, like this gorgeous emerald brooch. Scarab was very, very popular in the early 20th century, in vanity cases and figurines too. This is an Art Deco lady figurines. They were very sought after. Even Royal Dalton made a Nefertiti figurine. The French were greatly influenced with the Egyptian beauty, beautiful mantelpieces on marble, and brooches with gold and gemstones, with the Sphinx and the pyramid on them. A stunning Sekhmet brooch with rubies and diamonds, gorgeous, made in 1925 by Cartier of Paris, a perfect example of how every fashionable lady wanted a little bit of Egyptian inspiration in her jewellery. Just a small example of the Egyptian influence on decor and jewellery at the time. It also influenced a lot of famous architecture, like the Strasbourg building in Germany, with a pharaoh and his wife. She's smelling the papyrus plant, as you can see, and he's holding a duck. It was built in 1905. I think it was restored in the 1990s and recently in 2010. A beautiful example of Egyptian influence in the early 20th century. Harrods in London was redeveloped by Al Fayed, I'm sure you all know, in the 80s, and he decorated the escalator hall to refer to his beautiful culture and heritage from Egypt and all the pharaohs. So he was very proud of his heritage. Well, just as he should have been. I mean, it's such an amazing culture. The exhibition was fantastic. There was so much to see. I couldn't believe how many pieces there were displayed. One of the last pieces, last but not least, was the Egyptian sarcophagus. As mentioned earlier, the Egyptians believed in the afterlife, and this is a beautiful example of the sarcophagus that was to be the internal dwelling place of various kings and pharaohs and of the wealthy. They were elaborately decorated with carvings and paintings. As you can see, they were just beautiful craftsmanship and artistry of the ancient Egyptian times. It was an awesome the museum did an awesome job of displaying everything so beautifully, and there was just so much to see and look at. I needed to sit down on a coffee afterwards, but it was well worth the sore feet. I think I did about 8,000 steps or so that day. I was a bit sore the next day, but it was well worth it. So this brings me to the end of my video. I do hope that you enjoyed it and enjoyed all the artifacts and the beautiful statues and the quick glimpse of how it influenced the Western world. Well, if you've made it to the end of my video, I really appreciate you watching it with me. Yeah, I'm so grateful. And I'd love to see you in another video. And bye for now. Bye, guys.